We mentioned today is primary day in South Carolina, and the Democratic presidential candidates are appealing to voters in that state before their attention turns to Super Tuesday this week. Former South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg is hoping for a strong showing today in that Palmetto state. Mayor Buttigieg, good morning. Thanks for being here.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So, Mr. Mayor, let me start with, we'll talk about South Carolina, but first your reaction to the administration's handling of this coronavirus situation right now, given this spread of the virus in not just California, but Oregon and Washington state as well. Are you satisfied with the government's response, and what would you be doing differently?
Well, I'm very concerned with lives on the line and a huge impact coming to our economy. It's critically important that the administration and the White House handle this in a way that's based on science and not based on politics. I was particularly disturbed to hear the word hoax used by the president recently in talking about this issue. Our lives depend on the wisdom and the judgment of the president at a time like this. And what we should be seeing is not only a reliance on science and an insistence on moving politics away from this, but the kind of coordination that is uniquely the leadership role of the White House. That's here in the United States, coordinating the private and public sector to make sure that screening, treatment, and eventually a vaccine become available. And it's international coordination. Look, this virus doesn't care what country it's in. It doesn't respect borders. It's not going to be stopped by a wall. This is one of those moments where those international relationships are so important. Unfortunately, those relationships have been compromised.
Mayor Buttigieg, we do want to get to South Carolina as well. Polls show former Vice President Joe Biden has a commanding lead there. He said last night that if he wins big, he will be the nominee. Do you agree with that assessment?
No, I believe that we are positioned to become the nominee, but certainly the competition is heating up in states around the country. We're expecting a competitive finish here in South Carolina, and then on to Super Tuesday, where it's literally a coast-to-coast race.
Mayor, if it isn't
so we're working hard. We got organizers in every state. Say again?
Mayor, if it isn't you, who should the nominee be?
Well, look, obviously, we are campaigning based on the idea that my vision is the right one. I know that Senator Sanders is in the lead right now. I respect him. I respect his ideals. But this is a moment when I think we need to bring as many people together as possible. I think that's how we're going to build the majority that will defeat Donald Trump. Look, you don't have to be a diehard Democrat to be disturbed by the actions and the behavior of this president and to want things to change in this country. I'm offering a chance to turn the page and to move out of just the chaotic and divisive tone that we're experiencing in our politics right now. And we've been able to build up a grassroots campaign. A year ago, nobody had heard of me. And because we had the right vision, the right message, volunteers emerging to be part of this effort, people contributing on PeteForAmerica.com, as I'm urging anyone who supports this campaign to do right now in order to make sure we're competitive going into Tuesday. I believe that message is going to continue to carry us on to nomination and then to win in November and end Donald Trump's presidency.
Mr. Mayor, as you know well right now, moderates in the race are sort of dividing up the moderate part of the Democratic Party right now. Many Democrats say that split is basically giving this election, giving the nomination to Bernie Sanders going forward. So is your staying in this race ultimately helping Bernie Sanders?
Well, let me put it this way. Why would you step aside from a race to accommodate people who are behind you? Right now, I have the most delegates besides Bernie Sanders, the most votes besides Bernie Sanders.
But he is way ahead in the polls in all the Super Tuesday states,
on the map.
Sorry to interrupt, but he's way ahead of the polls in all the Super Tuesday states.
So we should probably consolidate around an alternative. That's right. So if you're looking for somebody other than Senator Sanders, look, he's very much in the lead, but most Democrats are looking for somebody else. And ours is the leading campaign for those looking for that alternative. I'm offering real, bold, meaningful, progressive change, but a way to do it that can actually gather together and energize rather than polarize that American majority that wants to see workers empowered, wants to see wages go up, believes in providing health care to everybody without forcing one plan on anybody, and insists that we take real action on gun violence and climate change. That's not just my agenda, that's America's agenda. And I believe my campaign has the best potential to deliver that, to defeat Donald Trump with a different kind of voice from the heart of the country, somebody who served in uniform, somebody who is calling out to people of faith with the message that God does not belong to any political party. I believe this is how we gather together the majority, not just to beat Donald Trump, but to win big enough that we send Trumpism and everything associated with it into the history books for good.
Mayor Pete Buttigieg, we appreciate your time. Continue to stay safe on the trail.
Thank you. Good being with you.